All right, should be good to go. Okay, let's call ourselves to order. Morning, everyone. We've got a different agenda, although it's kind of consistent. It's pretty busy this week, so we'll try to get to everything according to the schedule. After comments and review of the minutes, we're gonna review the working landscapes chapter. And then Andrew asked us to address a possible ARPA funding opportunity for the town again. So we're gonna do that in place of the continuance of the ERF discussion. So we'll pick up ERF in the next meeting. And then our standing topic of Jacob Krantz will be at 8:30, and then other business. Okay, with that, any comments from the public? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to the minutes. We'll note that we have 4 members missing Kim and Eric. For now. There we go. Minutes are up on the screen right now.
Nice job, Andrew, with 5.2, summarizing the conversation about the conservation chapter.
Thank you.
I think that was actually better than trying to track all the different individual comments and stuff.
Yeah, the chapter itself summarizes those comments pretty well. I added comments in my own network stuff, things that you all said.
I don't think I have it stated.
Great.
Yeah, I
thanks,
don't
sir.
either.
Yeah, it looks like I don't either.
Yeah, I'm looking good too. I did not have a chance to review it in advance. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion to approve.
Thanks, Gary.
I'll second.
Thanks, Laura. Let's vote to approve. All in favor? Aye.
I-
Opposed, none, absent. All right, motion carries. Minutes are approved. And the first topic today is the working landscapes chapter, an interesting chapter, I would note. A little different from what we were working on last time. Andrew, what would be your preferred plan for going through that?
Yeah, just working and getting it pulled up. I think
Sure.
the goal is very similar to the last one, looking at the goals, objectives, strategies, and actions. And if you all have comments on things you like, things you think might be missing, things you need to add to or explain further. Really, it's a high level. What else do you want in this chapter related to this topic in the plan? As we really pull things together here. Share my screen. I think the Shayla was the one that was working on this and. She had added a definition of what are working landscapes, and I think it might be useful if you haven't already, just to read through what that description is.
I like that definition. It gave me a very hopeful perspective as I was reading through the chapter, because it was more than just a farm with a tractor on it.
Yeah, I had one comment related to somewhere in there, it discussed solar farms as part of the working landscape. I don't know, I'm just a little troubled with that from the standpoint of, I've been working landscape as more natural than that, but I guess we should include it. I mean,
Yes, that
there's
first bullet
no,
there.
there's no agricultural products that come out of it. There's no recreation. I guess the benefit is,
You can graze livestock underneath solar.
yeah, it's rarely done though,
Yeah.
because they have to legally fence them in, which is
Hard
hard
to do trackers that are off the ground.
Yeah, I mean, it's done, but I haven't seen it around here,
Sure.
so I just wanted to throw that comment in.
The town has limited input over whether you can or can't put solar on things. I'm guessing that working landscapes are the same, but if a farmer wanted to put in solar, it isn't really the town's deal. Because it would be considered a whatever, like an acceptable site.
At a high level, pretty much, we saw recently an example of a field that had been hayed for years. That they wanted to install solar on it, we had those, chance to comment. It's a suggestion to the PUC, sort of as a comment.
Doesn't the town have to have a comprehensive energy plan in order to get expedited siting of things like that? Like the
Yes,
process can be sort of long. So does that energy management plan include things like, solar siting in forest versus farm versus, hayed fields?
so I'm not sure if it gets into comparing, cutting forest versus hay fields versus parking lots and preference there. I know that because we do have an enhanced energy plan, we can comment on those projects and, really, I think that the big thing are these known constraints. And an example is the class 2 wetland, that's a known constraint that was being impacted, as part of that project, and so that's why they were required to do the mitigation that they were doing.
Yeah.
But that the town is allowed to comment about that as well, and what they think is reasonable, for impacting that. And you obviously all had comments about that. I thought the comments about, not really knowing what the impact of wetlands will be when you're driving posts into them was interesting, as a relatively new practice.
Okay,
I'm looking, if it's helpful, I'm looking at the siting policies in the current new draft energy plan. And it says, large scale solar facilities and wind turbines should be located to preserve the scenic quality of the view sheds. Identified in chapter 13 of the comprehensive plan. So it's got a should there. And what else does it say? Watershed buffers shall remain undeveloped with the exception of consolidating existing utility infrastructure. So yeah, that's basically. And then it says the designated village center is not appropriate for. Basically like tall or large. Windmill solar infrastructure.
is there any recognition of, because I guess maybe this larger point of just solar and energy development is, should this working landscapes chapter make a reference to the existence of that energy plan And therefore just recognize that it exists and that decisions in that energy plan, should be, followed or, struggling to find the words, but, there should be a link back to it.
I think that would be appropriate, yes, and,
Yeah, for setting policies and considerations, see the energy
Mhm.
plan.
right. I think that, I think we have it somewhere in these conservation chapters, but it, another conversation has been to call for an update to those view sheds. The view shed map we have right
Mhm.
now is very old, as I think most of you know.
Mhm.
And so maybe in the light of this plan, calling for that, if that's something you're interested in.
Yeah, I thought we had that, maybe it was just in our comments, from reviewing the last town plan.
Yeah.
We had, yes, scenic view sheds, our comments were, view sheds are important and valued, these should be revisited as town, as Williston has changed as a result of both development and trees and vegetation growing up. Existing views are from roads and but should consider views from trails and public spaces as well.
Mhm.
As views from afar,
Mhm.
and consider new view shed regulations with a tiered approach. Similar to the SWHA revision. To identify important view sheds and focus on protecting those ones.
And what are you reading from, Reed?
It's the summary of all of our notes from reading the last town plan and then like just.
Yeah.
Simon took all of our comments and basically summarized them by topic.
So that's good to call it out.
And the technology's changed a lot too since we last did it. I think it probably costs more to do it now, but maybe better.
Mhm.
By using layers and elevations and known view.
That's
I
right. I
think
think
the
someone said
GIS
that-
approach
yeah.
might work.
Yeah,
Simon said something about, he thought we could identify which ones to even look into based on that, the layers. and
Where
then-
do you see that
Yeah,
place?
where can you actually see
And what do you
something
see from that place?
Mhm.
Kind of thing, yeah.
Right.
The other thing that I had just a general comment about, and I know it's in here a little bit, but I don't think there's enough emphasis on. What we can do to help facilitate the maintenance of working landscapes, like how can we make it easier for farmers to keep their land and not develop it, or. What could resources or plans could the town help with in just facilitating the whole thing, so it's easier for people that do own the land and want to conserve it, and
Mhm.
I think there could be more of that in there, maybe a little more emphasis near the beginning. That makes sense to you guys?
Mhm. Yeah, I liked the strategy that's in there on that topic that says, partner with UVM Extension to determine best uses for the soil types in Williston, set up a meeting to understand available resources and hold a forum and distribute or post resources to the donors and interested residents.
Yeah, I was thinking even at a higher level, how can the town be more creative and make it easier, maybe. Seeking funds, setting aside funds, I don't know.
Hmm.
Thinking of newer ways to make it happen.
I had a general comment as well, which is that, I think that there could have been a focus on mowing practices, so similar to how, similar to, soil example. If you have a large open hayfield and, we talk about no mow May and we talk about, not cutting your grass during certain times of year for, large hayfields for nesting. I thought that could use a specific call out, is that the working landscape similar to soil conservation, that how you sort of manage the day-to-day property should be linked to other conservation principles.
Or even whether or not you do it. This is
Mm.
another
Yeah.
question, should you leave it to be reforested? Through natural regeneration and stuff.
Yeah, right at the end, there's something about erosion, and it's the same. I thought there just isn't enough here,
Yeah.
especially because the
Expand upon
EPA just came down on Vermont for all the
Yeah.
farms that are polluting Lake Champlain. I think in Williston, we could. I mean, erosion is happening with all the floods.
Yeah, that's good.
That's a conversation that our group had, and I think I might have mentioned it to you all in the past. The conversation about what is a sustainable future for the working landscapes, and given the amount of erosion that comes from farm fields, if dairy farms are going away, what do those fields look like in the future, and are they hay fields?
Right, And-
Reforesting those areas?
yeah,
One of
Orange.
the planning commission members said, you know. Maybe it's about keeping those lands rural and not necessarily. Open fields,
yeah,
which is, I think, maybe a bit of a dramatic change from what a lot of Vermont is. A lot of what people picture when they picture rural Vermont, but.
but if dairy farms, yeah, are decreasing, then,
Related to that, in that intro where it discusses, what was it, the settlers brought farming traditions and cleared the entire area in the 1800s. I'm not sure that's true. I think it, generally for Vermont, it was they cleared 85% of it.
mhm,
And like I saw, I think Dave, you had a comment about old growth, so that would.
Yeah, there are
Right.
pockets.
Yeah, there are pockets and it's important that it wasn't entirely clear.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
So maybe a slight correction in that would be
Mm.
better.
Just say most,
More nuance.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure the statewide average is it cleared 85%, and now we're back to 85% forested.
I think that's accurate. My favorite example is Williams Woods.
mhm.
Charlotte, is that what
Yeah.
it is? Yeah. Yeah, that is a cool place, cause they got, you found the oldest tree in Vermont there, and with some internet coring, it was like 450 years old.
Yeah, there are some like monster
Wow,
small
yeah.
windows in there,
Yeah.
yeah.
I just planted a small white oak. Maybe someday.
If you wanna see a really huge one.
So Charlotte's super flat, like what would have led,
It's a weird
Pockets.
spot, cause it's like kinda wet,
It's on
like,
Green Bush Road.
yeah, and it has like some other stuff in there that is like, you're like, oh, that's not. Always what we see here, so I don't know if it was wetter, I don't know, you would know better than I would.
Yeah,
but-
I don't remember what the history is behind it, but it is a unique place, yeah.
It's beautiful though, everyone should go walk in there.
Do we have known pockets of old growth, you forestry people in Williston?
That's a good question. I mean, there are, like Talcott Woods is old, but
It's not.
I don't know.
Growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would assume there are pockets, like along riparian zones and stuff where people couldn't get to, or had no value in clearing them and things like that.
I think Talcott was cleared because at one point Ralph Tersini and I. When we were trying to find, when Ralph was still managing it, and we were trying to think about like if a trail could, like if access to Catamount. Front like UVM's right of way could provide access to Catamount when we were dealing with like the whole, how are we gonna get into the south side after the McCullough's. Driveway is no longer an option. We had like pulled old documents that I think are at the Forest Service on Spear Street. And at one point, there had been like a plan to make a dam, like a hydropower dam. Down like in that ravine and
There are
like.
some weird cisterns there.
Yeah, there's like a
See that?
bunch of
Yeah.
weird structures in
Yeah.
there. And there had been some like water energy thing that failed, like it either like didn't happen or they tried it and it was a failure and they pulled it. I can't remember all the details. But there is like a 400-year-old hemlock
Hmm.
in there.
Mm,
But I think it was just like a boundary. It's not like a whole old growth stand.
Okay.
It's just like a singular tree. I guess the other place that I was thinking is like, there's like a bunch of stands of like shagbark hickory.
There's one
Um,
up behind my house.
yeah, like all in that, and I don't, like that ridge, has that ridge been cleared or would have it?
I don't know, it's pretty rocky in there and stuff, it's cliffy and,
Yeah,
yeah, there are some big ones.
if there are, they're very tiny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my only question, so I think, David, you had a comment in the document about it, but. I think you asked like, do we even have old growth forest?
Yeah.
I think defining old growth forest might be a useful thing.
mhm,
Yeah,
I don't know if it's in this chapter or a different chapter, but I don't think lay people who don't research these things know
Right.
what is and isn't, and what the status of that is in Williston, which is, if it is present today, it's very tiny pockets that are
Yeah.
not well known. And there are people who are considering trying to grow old growth forests on their land as part of the current use program.
Yeah, so maybe what you say, like, so define, identify and protect. This might be
Yeah, I
a way
like
to
that.
look at it.
And like the define part is critical, like if, especially if we're thinking about like function, right, like. Is it serving
Mhm.
the function of,
I guess to that point, you know. An old tree, you know, amongst the stand of new trees isn't doing much. It doesn't have the characteristics of an old growth forest, whereas. Like that new example at Catamount. It's like, in a way, what Ethan did there now is almost functioning more like an old growth forest. I mean, even though it's
Mhm.
not, but like, he's setting it up where. Could it reach that status more quickly because of the work that was going on there? I mean.
I don't know. I don't know if it
biologically?
would reach it more quickly, I think the point is that like it will reach it. As
At
opposed,
all.
right, yeah, exactly, as opposed to like failing and being
Mhm.
unhealthy, is that
Okay.
a fair?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
I think, yeah, I thought, I remember at one of Ethan's talks, him saying that is to try to test the theory, can you accelerate moving toward a growth forest by creating some of the characteristics earlier through
Mhm.
cutting? You can't make a tree older, but you can,
Right.
but you can prevent like the
Mhm.
monolithic
Mhm.
age class from taking over and then becoming unhealthy.
And it's like, we are staring down the barrel of climate change in the sense that we're like seeing the impacts now, and so how do we like build a more resilient forest that would actually age well under like future conditions?
Yeah, and Dave, like you said, that you kind of indicated that old growth tree, single trees may not be that valuable, but in some senses they are, because they have the genetics of the old trees, so
It's
it
been
might
like 400
help
years.
survive
Yeah.
climate change with unique genes and things like that,
Mhm.
so. You know, even though there might be just a few, they may be really valuable.
Interesting.
Well, so we have 10 minutes left in this agenda. Among this group, I know we could talk about trees all day. So let's, one other general, issue that I saw here was about, development, and there was some discussion about farm worker housing and versus residential housing. I think we need to just be very careful with how some of these wording play out, because I think if the town isn't careful, it's gonna look like, well, low and moderate income residents are free to live in the urban buildup areas, but we're gonna limit residential housing everywhere else.
Yeah,
And that kind of perpetuates this like class of unaffordable housing, and I saw some wording in there that really kind of like. It was like limit residential housing except for farm worker development. It just felt very like classist. And I think the town needs to be sort of careful about how that gets presented. Read.
Yeah, I picked up on some of that too, and I think we talked about it in the what's the other chapter we looked at? We had conservation and we had
Rural land use.
rural land use, yeah. This one overlaps a lot with rural land use. Because working landscapes makes up a large component of that. And I think one of the things that was important to me when we reviewed that section was that I feel like housing needs to be. We can't stop housing from being developed in the rural area, because otherwise it just becomes more and more expensive for people to live there. And so
Yeah.
maybe it's more important, like the characteristics of the housing, maybe that it has to also meet the affordability standards that we expect in other areas of town.
Mhm.
However that gets achieved, then that's up to landowners and developers in the town to figure out, like, how do we make it? Maybe it's through using our housing fund to help make some of the housing more affordable, or maybe it's certain designs that we allow people to use that, you know, are cheap to build, but look kind of like rural structures, silos, barns, things like that. I don't know, but I just feel like we shouldn't be completely stopping all that development, anybody from adding housing. And
I'm not gonna pretend like I can make recommendations on that front, Reed, but I did suggest that maybe just removing the limit residential. So that it's clear that in the rural areas, we're limiting the industrial and commercial development. I mean, if those tools work, great. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know enough to say that they would or wouldn't. My suggestion was to just take away the suggestion that you're gonna limit residential development in the area.
what about things like, farmers markets though? Wouldn't that be considered commercial? And I wouldn't be upset to see.
Right.
Like, basically like Adams.
Mhm.
Or I should.
Do
Or
farmers
actually-
markets need zoning now? Does Isham need to have a permit for
And
that?
it's
Yes.
been kind of
Andrew says
controversial,
yes.
yeah,
Yeah, I
like the
think that's an
neighbors
issue
have-
right now.
right, like some of. Both Adams and Isham's, as they've like gotten moved towards kind of like. Agro-tourism, like, right, like they're blurring the lines between like
Only events.
agriculture and agro-tourism.
Mhm.
People have had neighbors have had like questions and like noise
Like a roadside stand
concerns.
turns into a building with refrigerators and
Mhm.
produce section. And now serves ice cream and
Oh, yeah,
now
no.
also has live music when I do, like, at what point does it
Yeah.
cross the
Right,
usage
yeah.
line? And I think
Mhm.
that's where, because I know they're doing musical performances on the back of
Mhm.
Adams Market. I think it's wonderful, but I also don't live right next door. So I think we
Yeah.
have to be careful about those things.
And I think we have to like also think really carefully of like, if we say that we really value places like Isham's and Adams in
Mhm.
town and like the way it looks and the service that it provides to the community, then I think we have to be willing to bend on some of the things that we would. And I'm saying we as like the broader, like the royal we, the broader community, the proverbial we. On some of the things that like we might be like, oh, the music is loud or like there's parking, because it's not actually economically viable to farm. And so like,
Yeah.
how do we like make it
Mhm.
economically viable for these places to persist into the future? And like, what's the balance in there? If like, the thing that I always, in my head, if you like, you know, drive past Cyples and then you drive past Isham's, it's like it's like clear that like, I think one model is serving the family and the community in a different way than the other model. And so like, how do we allow for that and have like, but yeah, I think it's a zoning question and I don't know.
I'll mention the state regulation that, you know, you can have a farm stand. Then we can't regulate that if you're, you know, you're selling products that you're growing at your farm. I don't really need a zoning permit for that. Really, it's just them notifying us. It's the question, once you start doing other things, selling other people's products, et cetera,
Mhm.
and that's why. The Ishams, we have permits with them now, is because they're going beyond that.
And Fontaine has like a little, like lunch
Yeah.
burger.
Yeah, oh,
cafe,
yeah.
and, like,
Right.
I don't even know where that falls on things.
That one sort of has a permit. No, you're right.
Yeah,
Sort of has.
but I would imagine there's people who go there who are really glad that it's there.
Oh,
So
yeah,
it's
we've
like,
gone there, it's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so there are questions about, you know, a lot of those uses are. They continue because they're
Non-conforming.
existing, and they're non-conforming, and in ways, yes, establishing
stuff
a
is
new use
non-conforming.
like that is a challenge, we would probably say no. And so that's a question I think I'd be interested in your opinions.
I think that's maybe a topic for like a full-fledged series of discussions, because so like, okay, Fontaine. Isham, Adams, two on like the Lewis farm now has like
Mhm.
beef and honey sign up, and then like what's like 2 houses or 3 houses down from there that like does weddings and also has
oh, yeah, the
flowers.
red bar, is it red?
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're doing a concert event. Multi-night concert event, the camping.
Yeah.
Shh, shh. Don't bring that up.
Oh.
Andrew's like news to
I didn't
me.
hear that.
Oh, I mean, it's not publicized, you
This
know?
is
Okay.
that place down the road from the cemetery?
Yeah,
Yeah, that has like
yeah.
flowers for sale.
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
pumpkins, we always get our pumpkins there. I think they used to have, my mother-in-law told me that when she was in college or med school, she skied there. Like they used to have like Nordic trails.
Back when there's snow.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then like is Pockets, is that in Williston or is that in
Yeah,
Richmond?
it is.
Yeah.
So there's like, and
And people value that a lot.
yeah, yeah, so there's like a bunch of, I think like. Roadside stands that like we probably should think about. Like into the futures. Are if these folks are interested in going in the direction of adamant nations. For economic viability and for them to hold on to these lands. Like what's the
And those things probably increase the resiliency and livability of Williston.
100%, and for some of those locations, they're also in key like flood resilience places, right, like. I don't know, there's like a constellation of
Yeah, I think,
discussion in
I
there.
think an expanded section on how to make rural landscapes more affordable and economically viable.
Right,
Would include things like that. How can the town help basically to maintain
100%.
them? Including housing. I mean, the housing thing, I think, like you may have indicated, Dave, is a little tricky, partially because there's an obvious need for farm workers. They usually want to be nearby, so maybe you could. Somehow the permitting could be easier to build a small house for families and such. But we also have to be careful. There's also other people in town that use low income people to run their businesses too. If we emphasize one and not the other, I think generally just how do we make affordable housing? How do we support it better?
Available throughout town.
Yeah, for many people. But I think the thing that was missing in here to me was a bigger emphasis on, we think this is important, how can we help? And how can the town help facilitate the maintenance of these working landscapes?
Right,
So, this had to be a short discussion because of our, no, it's
There's a
fine.
lot of it,
Andrew did add a note, to the goal here that I think a new strategy for agribusiness. Generally, getting to all of these points of both encouraging tourism, possible zoning, and Gary's last point. So I added that note, in real time, and I think we're gonna have to leave it there.
Thank you
Well,
all.
it's good though, it's fun to
Yeah.
look
Yeah.
at, good stuff.
oh, the cards, that's another one, like on Sunset Hill, Glen and Adrian card. And they're doing 4-H there now, yeah.
I mean, don't forget the astronomy lady,
Oh,
or
yeah.
planetarium lady.
Oh,
whatever.
yeah.
Yeah, I think, and so many of these places people in Williston think of as like iconic. Special
Totally,
places in
right.
Williston, but most of them are probably non-conforming in some way.
or even if they're not non-conforming, we should just be saying. We value spots like this, or if we value spots like this, we need to think strategically about how to not let them turn into housing developments, right? Like,
Yeah,
Or go fallow and
Yeah.
whatever
exactly.
comes.
The guy who sells cutting boards in Maple on Mountain View Road, who I wave to as I bike past him every weekend.
Yeah, like had my golf course.
Yeah, so,
Oh, I've
I mean,
never noticed that.
Oh, yeah, I saw that, that's what I said.
he is there
Yeah.
every Saturday and
Yeah.
a lot of Sundays too. He is
Huh.
wave to him every weekend. All right, let's move on. Next topic is, we had the punt on the ERF continuation, in
I'm
favor
sorry.
of this ARPA discussion. So Andrew, ARPA money coming in hot.
Yes, so heard from Eric that the select board will be discussing. This ARPA, basically allocating the rest of the ARPA funds at their October 1st meeting, and so this is our last meeting to discuss this. It's
That's why.
sort of late breaking, so sorry about that, but
Yeah.
we're doing what we can. This memo, if you remember, goes back to this time last year, this exact meeting, actually. And yeah, basically looking for updates, any additions, anything you want to maybe prioritize off of this list. And what I'll be doing is just taking your comments and updating the memo, and then I'll be at the select board meeting. I will mention too that we had a similar discussion at the Catamount committee meeting. Both the Conservation Commission and the Forest Committee made a short list for ARPA funding, and so. Both making requests to the select board.
Mhm.
What's the total available? Going to the select board?
Unofficially, Jean said 1.1 million.
But she
Um,
thought a 500,000 was probably tied up.
Yeah,
For the
it's,
parking lot.
Unclear.
For ERS,
She
there are-
she did not say what it,
They have their priority list,
Mhm.
and then they're
I mean,
trying to fit in
It
the
was
stuff
in the
that-
town email. I mean, everyone
was
in the
it?
town
Okay.
got the email that like,
that's a big project, the pedestrian bridge on Industrial Ave. That's a big project, so there are public works projects that, they're expensive.
and there are 8 like. Memos, right, like
I
of
think so.
From each groups, each of the groups.
and from town committees, the food shelf, just like they have.
Input from a lot.
They have 8 pieces of paper that they're gonna be like, what? And I said, do you think all 8 like asking bodies are gonna get something? And she was like, I don't know. She
Yeah.
didn't say it like that. I just made her seem very flippant. She's not. She said it in a more like, I think that's the intent, but I don't really know.
Right.
Yeah, I almost wanna prioritize the list, like just make it shorter.
That's what we
But-
did. And
Yeah.
then my other thing related to this is that we have some. Asks that could be potentially joint.
Mhm.
Trail counters,
Yes,
Catamount,
Yeah.
that's the big one.
and trail or permanent trails, yeah,
Mhm.
we probably could share them.
That was my, I think like we could, trail counters, we could share.
And can I ask about the bridge,
Mhm.
over the Allen Brook,
Mhm.
like, it's just sitting there? Is there money planned for it, or can this come out of ARPA funds? What's the?
That's part of the conversation too, is
Okay,
putting some of those ARPA funds towards that bridge.
Yeah.
The number right now is $55,000 for engineering design and then repairs.
We've done it, like, it's not, it's just gonna wash away again. Like, this is when did we do it last?
oh, it was recent, last summer, right?
Yeah.
And then before, I think we've done it twice since I've been on this committee, and I've not been on the committee 10 years.
Oh, so we could just say the Beavers are taking over, just let it go.
I mean, we
Yeah,
should talk about it, but I'm,
there's several bridges over Allenbrook. We're talking about the one next to the
the
school.
main boardwalk.
Yes.
yeah, I mean, it
That's
is
close.
highly used and children love it and it's close to the school and I know that there are kids that walk to school that way. I just think it's like. Have you seen the river? I don't know.
Yeah.
There are kids walking to school on it today.
So you think if it's redone, it needs to be done differently so that it can last longer? Is that
I
what you're
don't know, I
suggesting?
feel like it had like we said that the last time and it was
Yeah.
like diesel pylons and I don't know, it would maybe ask Melinda. I just feel like we've had this discussion of like, how do we make it flood resilient and
Yeah.
like.
Hmm,
I've been hearing a lot from the public, I get calls about it, asking when it will be repaired.
Yeah,
I defer to
I ask
people to
about
the
it
select
constantly.
board. If that's something that this committee wants to discuss, have a longer conversation, I think. We should do that.
Is there a
Um,
better spot? Like, could we like relocate the crossing in a spot that's
It
not?
wasn't so long. for
Chat with the
one
beavers and find out where they're not gonna be.
Right,
thing.
yeah,
What you do?
The ARPA discussion, I think we should prioritize this memo. The funding may be voted to go towards that, but I think. This committee could discuss after that, I mean,
How-
ultimately, you'll be. You can comment on that,
yeah.
and I think that if that's something everybody's interested in discussing.
So let's, we do have some time to talk about this, so we have until 8:30 when, the park district will come back. So, let's just go through the memo to see what we did, maybe we can add a recommendation about the Allenbrook walkway, so so first is the trail counters, $10,000. Trail maintenance projects at Schmacher and Mud Pond, that. Quick math adds up to $500,000 right there.
And I think it's more than that,
yeah,
Those prices are from a while ago.
Yeah,
I bet the mud fund. Is $500,000 itself.
new trail assessment. Tree survey. general outreach. Primitive trail parking lots.
Feels like all the things on our level two just need to go because we're not gonna get funding even for all the things on our level one list.
Yeah.
That's my gut.
Oh, is that why there's ones and twos? Got it. Well, question about the primitive trail parking lots. Do we need that do we need to make a recommendation? Like, is the, Winooski Valley Park District gonna ask the town for any cost sharing to develop Jacob Krantz?
So the hope is that parking lot will serve as,
The existing one?
the access, and
Yeah.
Winooski Valley Park District will own that.
Make any
And
improvements. to the apartment.
I assume they would be responsible for any improvements, so I think that is dated.
Is one of the 8 memos coming from them? Do you know?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
I don't think so.
So that's no to the, would they be asking for ARPA funds?
Mhm.
We don't think.
But they also wouldn't be asking for the town to do cost sharing on the parking lot is what I'm also hearing. So we haven't heard of them asking us for costs. Anyhow, okay. Okay, so then, let's talk about the first 3 priority number ones. Trail counting, trail counters.
I think this is like an easy one. It's not expensive. We would use them. It would give us a lot of information. We could share them with the Catamount people. I'm very biased because this is like the work that I do. So everyone else
Okay.
should talk about it.
The estimated cost would be 10,000. Is that,
There are other ways to get similar information without, and actually the day after our meeting, Strava Metro released like a new improved system for requesting data.
Wow.
I still think it's nice to have multiple, like Strava doesn't get everybody.
I was gonna say,
yeah,
It's a weird
what's the
overestimate.
equity of the measurements on Strava? Like, is it missing people who maybe
It
are in different
overestimates.
classes?
Oh, I mean, I can, if we wanna do a whole thing about this, I just did like a comparative.
But your recommendation is not to rely just on Strava.
No, my recommendation is that if you're gonna use Strava in the long term, that you periodically ground truth it, because it's adding users
Mhm.
rapidly across a range of demographics, and, but also it like is really good at double, triple, quadruple counting the same person,
Hmm.
because it's on a grid and it's like not fine scale, and so if you like forget your water bottle and.
Go back down.
Yeah.
dude, quick overall question about Strava is that it only counts the people using the app, right?
Yes, but it's a real lot of people. It's more people than you think it is. It's
But
like.
there are huge gaps too.
Yeah.
I mean,
I-
people my age don't use.
I-
Well, so
I
that,
personally-
that historically has been the case, and I think there are like, you don't use Strava, but that's less the case now. Like, actually, I presented to a room and like a woman in her 80s who was like just visiting her son. It was like, I use it on my walks now, so I don't
Yeah.
get like it
I'll
is.
bet it's a much lower percent than other age groups.
It is a lower percent than
I
other.
mean, I don't know
age groups.
anybody that uses it.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that hike and use trails.
But it's like millions and millions of
Yeah.
people. So yes, it is, it's as a whole overestimating, and it's underestimating
Certain.
certain groups. So it's worth not relying on it, but I think the thing that's useful is like spot checking and figuring out where it's off and how, and then extrapolating. It does give you like, I don't know, I think it would be cool for us to be like, how are our trails getting used? Like, what is the pressure on them? And that's what I see the value of trail counters as. I think the other way to do it is to like, I said this to Andrew, the old school way, which is to park a bunch of undergrads at trailheads with clipboards or iPads on like a systematic.
Yeah, you still don't get everybody with that, whereas I think with the trail
Right.
counters, you're
You
much
get
more
all
likely to get.
hours.
Yeah, it's there 24/7. I don't know, I'm gonna suggest a slightly different ask that would include several of these, like maybe an ABC type thing. I think if we say generally. The primitive paths are extremely well used. we saw
Mhm.
that and it continues. And so therefore, we need to know it. What, how much use they have, so
Measure.
there's the trail counters, we need to expand it. There's the goals to expand the primitive trail system, and then the third one maybe doesn't, we don't ask much for, but we need to maintain it, which is the. Kind of three pieces, that one, I think we probably don't have enough money to ask for that, but I think it needs to be a plan for how to do it. The number
like
one
that.
thing we're gonna ask for is the trail counters, but we're also gonna. At least start to plan for how to improve it, how to expand it. And then the town needs to, maybe not out of this ARPA funds, but we need to be more cognizant of how to maintain it.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
like step one,
Yeah, like an ABC kind
yeah,
of thing.
so it makes it more likely.
And the ask could be as little as $10,000, but that could be the one thing that, a piece that we need to start this process.
I like that.
Reed,
Yeah, I like that. I would just reorder it. I think we need to measure the use, invest in what we already had built, and then
Okay,
look at expanding the trail
I like
network, because I feel like if we
yeah.
do this, pay for an assessment to potentially add new primitive trails while we have others that are in disrepair, I
Good
just
call.
feel like.
Right, so it's a step, like, as soon as you find this information, you can go to step two, and
Mhm.
then when you identify that, you decide whether. Can we even consider
Capacity to
expanding it?
maintain more trails, yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
That's how I would view
The-
it. Trail counters.
the one point I would just say, and maybe this is consistent, ARPA funding all has to be expended by 2026.
Right.
And so you don't have time for a lengthy.
Well,
review
maybe
process.
the piece we need from ARPA is the $10,000. The other pieces are how we're gonna use it to better understand what we do next.
Right,
I think we should ask for more than 10,000. I think
I
we
was
should,
gonna say, if we're gonna share them with Catamount, I would ask for 8 trail counters to share between our primitive trail system and Catamount. It's just my mental swag.
Yeah,
So Dave,
I'm gonna.
maybe an
just ask
in-between
a
thing
friend
was,
who just
how long do you have to spend?
2026.
2026. So maybe part of it is to hire somebody next summer to make this happen. To, a intern, or I don't know, just a consultant or something.
ARPA is gonna be heavy on. A project,
Infrastructure.
Right,
infrastructure, something that you can put out to bid and have a guaranteed completion date by the end of 2026.
we can put out consultants to bid.
You can,
I know, it's not-
you can definitely do that, but
So I'm unclear on the timeline for spending. We were talking about this with the Catamount Forest Committee and Gene was
Yeah,
saying
that's
that.
right.
The deadline is kind of not existent anymore because they've shifted it into a town account. Which kind
Oh.
of seems like a weird.
So we had
It
money
has to be
laundering
earmarked.
sort of
It
situation.
almost like has to be earmarked by
They said they
26.
put it in a community fund.
So it
I was like, laundered it.
As long as the community fund has the same restrictions that the ARPA restrictions have, I guess that's probably why the federal government's okay with that.
I think it's fine.
I say it jokingly, for the record,
Yeah, right.
but
Yeah.
basically, I think that deadline is, not
Mhm.
as
interesting.
pressing.
So I would like to see trail counters, so that we can measure our usage. Then I would like to see our list of repairs or replacements that are. We don't really have a funding plan for. We've got the smoker, the mud pond, and in my view.
Allenbrook.
An Allenbrook crossing. It would be the ask, I don't know whether that's a new location or whether that's repairing the existing location with a new design, but.
Suspension
I think
bridge.
you,
I know, I was like, the
Or like a
Golden Gate
floating-
Bridge.
a floating bridge across the new pond,
Yeah.
like.
A ferry perhaps.
Well, maybe, could that be an engineering study that tells
Right.
us where
Right.
we could put it and how much it would cost?
It could say
Is
either
that enough of
repair
a
or
hard thing,
replacement.
Dave, for
Oh,
the,
yeah,
so basically, I think that's a really important.
When did
Please.
we last didn't we do the mud pond? So there's like a couple places, like this is the case in Richmond on the Johnny Brook Trail where like VYCC. Spent so much time and energy building this beautiful boardwalk, right? And it, before they did that, it had washed out many times, and then I was like, oh, it's gorgeous, it's definitely gonna be here for a long time, it withstood like a couple. Small instances of heavy rain, and then, yeah, and now it's like,
Totally.
it's just like.
Um,
Yeah,
So I don't know,
Yeah.
can we get, do we need an estimate of what an engineering study would cost? So I guess that study is for the bridge, like you said, Reed. So it might be, where's the best place for it?
Yeah,
And how do we build it to be resilient and withstand future flooding?
I'm imagining hiring somebody who's gonna come out and answer that for the town. Do you rebuild where it currently is and
Yeah,
just with a
it's a good
different
idea.
design, or do you go with a new location and
Mhm.
and a whatever fits that?
I'm thinking of and not many people know this because it's a bridge to nowhere, but there is a bridge over Allen Brook. Down, closer to me, it parallels 2A. And it's a I don't know if you would call it a suspension bridge, but it's a fully arching bridge. That is steel construction from one end of the high to the other end, and it just bypasses the bottom of the river completely. It's solid steel with plank construction, and it was meant as the connector between the Industrial Ave path to what was the Alliance Church path into Taft's Corners. That bridge cost a fortune to build, but it is not going anywhere. But when you guys are talking about it, that's what is coming to mind, is like, that's what's
Something's
needed.
actually like.
Yeah.
It's a full 20 feet off the ground. From the bottom. Have you ever seen that trail? No one's
The
ever seen
different
it.
topography there.
I've seen
though,
it,
Too,
yeah.
I mean, there are higher banks and.
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
in that area,
Yeah,
Which makes it easier to do that.
it does.
Because it's really, as we know, it's pretty flat
Yeah.
around where the current bridge is.
Mhm.
I'm thinking of that as being that point now on the boardwalk trail. Where you kind of step down onto the first rise and then you step down further.
Yeah,
And like, if you just had a bridge that basically arched all the way over from that rise to the next, you would get most of the way there, I think.
Yeah, that and $1 million.
That and $1 million, of
that, I
course.
guess like that's my point, is like,
At
I
what
think,
cost?
well, and how much have we spent? Like, I don't know, maybe my memory is not correct, but I really feel like the last time we redid that, we were like, we're gonna spend a lot of money and make it be
I bet we
sustainable.
spent close to 100,000 then.
Yeah,
Which is-
No
that's gotta be
information being shared.
10 years ago, maybe, or something.
I don't know if you've seen this. This is the design that we got for the repairs. So they're looking at armoring
I have not seen this.
this area. And this is the extent that would be repaired. The other thing that was a suggestion of the engineer who designed this was there are sort of temporary, they come in kits. They're metal bridges that look sort of similar to this one down here, if you see it. And you basically just slide it across an expanse that is existing. They're really expensive, as most things are. I am under the impression that that would be more expensive than this fix would be, which is surprising. But it can
but they
be,
think that would withstand future similar flood events. I think the reality is, we're gonna see these flood events increasingly frequently, and this area is like, it's gonna do this
Vulnerable.
again, right? Yeah, like, it's gonna do
It's gonna
that.
change course again and
Yeah.
wipe out more
Yeah.
supports.
the bank underneath the overlook is being undermined.
At risk.
And so that, if that is going to be a future landing zone, if that's gonna be used, it needs to be armored and repaired underneath there. How you cross that expanse, if you actually sink helical piles like there are right now in the ground, or if you do some expanse that is, unsupported from underneath.
So I don't think we need to engineer this in
No.
this meeting.
Would everybody support adding that maintenance repair project to our maintenance item?
I think what I'm hearing is that it would send a strong signal. For us to say this is an important area for the school to have access to, for kids to have, I especially like it as a path. It's another way to connect to.
My children love it, so.
Yeah.
I think it would be great for us to signal that like this needs to be maintained, but it really needs, like, a better place needs to be evaluated,
Like, we need a long-term solution that's gonna
Right.
address flood reality in the state.
Which could mean a totally different location for even the entrance into the trail.
Yeah.
It could mean, you know, crossing earlier, but I think that's, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, but I think an evaluation of best location and.
Right, best location for crossing, best, you know, permanent sighting of a.
Maybe the way we say it is like, we know our trails are heavily used, we'd like resources to measure them, we know this one is particularly critical, given its location.
And it's
In
current state.
proximity to the school, its current state and the number of calls that we receive about it, we'd like to address this one
High priority.
Yeah.
first.
I wonder if we can do the quick fix, like it doesn't cost very much while we're waiting for an engineer to come in, that way people can use it, and then quick fix, but it's gonna get flooded again.
Well, that used
So
to be
what?
Simon, he would just go out there with a hammer and
Oh,
some
right,
puncheons. and-
yeah,
Yeah. I know what he did.
And it's kind of funny, but it is that this is the question that we have here is. Does a more permanent, larger, more engineered project that is a, you know, a suspension bridge or something with, you know, cement. Pilings on each side,
Yeah.
is that the solution, or is it a more primitive option that is, you know, might wash away in a storm? But can be repaired for a relatively low cost and, you know, there is that main,
Well, that could be part of the engineering.
Do you go harder or
You know,
softer?
Right.
Make suggestions
Right.
of not only where can we move it, but what do we put there?
right,
If you have
There's,
some,
there's two things to be thinking about, is the location right now ideal? And do you want a permanent or temporary solutions, and do you either wanna be
Mhm.
jumping over rocks? Because it's a, you know,
yeah, there's safety issues and.
Right.
Kids.
and it's because it's kids, right? And so, yeah, I think those are the right questions, I agree.
I worry if we put a list of 3. Relatively large ticket items, the Smoker Trail, the Mud Pond, and also the Allen Brook, that it will just like glaze over. select
I
board
agree.
Decisions, so I actually, I love those other ones too, but I think that the Allen Brook repair or new plan needs to be the #1 ask.
Yeah, I'm not even sure we should ask,
The other ones I think could go in.
but I think that's
Yeah.
because I think first that getting the counters and evaluating where is the use, that's where we need to focus
We
our
got those
money.
2 things, counters and money to do something about the Allen
And
Brook.
this is important, you gotta get that fixed, yeah.
So my colleague at MSU texted back and she said that she got new ones that are TRA FX. And she likes them for durability and cost. She thinks she paid like 2 or 2.5K for a starting bundle, which included a dock at 4 counters.
Uh-huh.
And then, you could buy more individually. She also got like a data net subscription that goes with them, so I would have to like look into whether or not.
So $10,000 should be enough.
Yeah.
Who's gonna use it in the town? Like, who, is this, Andrew, are we signing you up to basically be the permanent user of up to 8 trail counters? Who would actually use them?
that's a question I have too, does it need an expert?
Well, I don't know if this. She bought a data net, I'll have to look into this brand, and if it does. I don't foresee you ever not having a. Like even if for some reason our whole Parks Rec and Tourism department went away at UVM, which it's not, we're like. About to have another person, it's just not like so complicated,
Like, could like someone like Ann, could our trail steward help during the
Yeah.
summer months? Like,
yeah,
like putting devices out, taking them back
Yeah.
in to charge or.
yeah.
It's good to know, it's helpful.
Do
Okay.
devices get stolen, like, is there some kind of?
Yeah,
Get the
Yeah, but-
item somewhere.
Vandalism,
Yeah,
an issue.
yeah, vandalism, I think that happens with all field equipment, but
Especially in popular trail.
yeah, but these. I don't know about this brand, but like, they're not easy, they're big.
Mhm.
The thing that's getting more popular that I think gets stolen more are like the. Camera slash,
Mhm.
there's a technology that pulls your. Billing zip code off your cell phone when you pass it.
Yeah, jeez.
Wow. So right now we have 5 trail counters.
Really useful.
Is that all we had in there?
Yeah, 5 for 10,000. So I would recommend that we update that cost, because it's now over a year old.
Yeah,
But Tim just said you can get 4 for 2,000.
well,
2 to
Um,
3, yeah.
Yeah, so. Let's say we want 10 for 10,000.
So that was a bundled package.
she
I
said she
see,
paid
4.
2 or 2.5 for a bundle, which included a dock and 4 counters, and then she said you can add more counters for $500. And I make armored boxes for them, so that usually adds another 30. Then I said, did you pay an annual cost for data subscription? And she said she did a 3 or 5 year interval, and that actually the subscription is really great, and it like makes it very friendly and makes graphs for you, and that like managers easily use it. So I can look more into this company.
I would say something like 5 to 8 trail counters for $10,000.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think that-
Depending on the brand you pick
Everything.
and the.
yeah,
You could just
I-
say
I think-
$10,000 for trail counters.
yeah.
We don't need to say a number of trail
Right.
counters.
To be shared between
Yeah, trail counters, yeah.
town property.
Also, if, for the record, like, if you were like, we really need the subscription. And it's like $80 a year or whatever, or like, or 100, but I'm just gonna go with a round number, and we did it for 5 years. At the end of that, then you could reevaluate and be like, we got this data, we used this $10,000 to get 5 years of data. Do we wanna continue that, right? Or like,
Could even sell them to another town and say, hey, you guys want,
Yeah.
we're no longer using them, do you wanna?
I think you should put it in for 20 personally, but and 20 and don't put a number in, because then you have a budget for cases and everything else, and then you know the budget's gonna get cut in half anyway. So that's what I would
Oh.
recommend.
But then we'd have to spend it if we got it.
I don't think we're gonna. I guess the risk would be if you're like, where am I putting this equipment when it's not out there?
Yeah,
Like if we bought too many.
Andrew's office,
Could build some shelves.
yeah.
Can count how many times he goes in and out.
Um,
So I will just say this, there is this technology called Streetlight, it's getting more popular in the national park system, it's very expensive. However, it pulls billing zip codes from cell phones as they pass, you can get a ton of information. And it is like, I think, the future of visitor use survey technology in a large scale system. I don't think that we need to do it in town, I'm just telling you that it exists and
yeah.
the federal government is using it.
The point, I guess, right. We're not a national park,
Right.
we're a small town, we wanna have a better understanding of the use of our trails. And if simple trail counters that can be easily deployed are a good way of doing that, then like we're making a recommendation for 20,000, 10,000, whatever, to invest in that capability. Right, that's
Yeah.
the general recommendation.
Mhm.
Great, so let's not be too specific and just say $20,000 for investing in tracking our trail monitoring equipment, subscriptions, hardware, blah, blah, everything else.
So 20,000 is what we're deciding.
Well, I'm making that suggestion because I think in the world of ARPA, 10,000 is literally nothing. It almost looks like why, why not make it more substantial? It's ARPA, baby.
Yeah, I guess I agree with that. Now let's focus on the second piece.
Yep,
Which
I
is
agree.
the engineering thing.
Yep.
And, viability of different locations.
So right now we have Schmacher Trail for
I think we should-
164.
I think we should do not,
Get rid
I think
of
we
it.
should set that aside, and our second piece is just the
Allenbrook Crossing.
Yeah.
Allenbrook crossing. How do we make that happen? What do we need to know to push that forward?
Can I also just
You don't like
say,
that, Kim?
No, it's fine, I'm
Let-
just like so stressed
Can we
out
pause
about
for
it.
a second about the amount asking for the trail counters?
yes,
I think that there needs to be like a reasonable kind of expense of like what that would cost. And my general sense from what Kim said is that it wouldn't be $20,000.
Mhm.
Is there maybe I understand that we're short on time, we won't meet again.
Could we write the word minimum? Like it will cost us at least $10,000 to do, so that the budget doesn't get,
I think if you want 8 trail counters, it's, between everything else, it's gonna cost more than 10. That's the,
Well,
That's
she just
the-
said you can get 8 for 5,000.
and the casing and the
Well,
setup
yeah, I mean, so
on the
another
trail
5,000
and the
should cover that.
labor to,
Well,
You
the
know?
laborers, I mean, we have to deal with the labor. What do we do with the data once we
Yeah.
get it? But
Kim's doing some mental math.
What about-
I think 10,000 would be enough.
Yeah, it sounds
personally,
right to me.
But,
to
I
do
mean-
15.
That's what
Yeah.
my rate says.
yeah,
I'm trying to,
10,000 for the
If we're gonna share them with Catamount, we might want a couple more than what we would ask for primitive
Yeah.
trails. For ourselves, so I think we should ask for 15, and we expect that to cover
I'd say
at least
8 to
5
10, I'd say
to 5
8
to 10 counters. To be shared between the locations, depending on all the other protocols.
great.
Okay,
does that
Um,
seem reasonable, Kim?
yeah, I think it does. I think Bess is making the armored boxes,
Yeah.
like she's,
but even if we bought them,
yeah,
you know, we may spend a couple $1,000s on them.
yeah, and I make armored boxes for them, so that usually adds another $30 or so per counter. But she's
Yeah.
like going to the hardware store and,
Yeah, but that's,
Andrew's not gonna go to the hardware store and make eight,
yeah, I
eight
mean,
boxes.
we can
That makes sense.
investigate, can we just buy them for
Yeah.
$500 a
Yeah.
piece or something? Or couple $100s a piece.
I can talk to her more about this to see if this brand is the right choice, but this cost seems consistent to me with like. I don't, with other.
Yeah.
Similar offerings.
Based on the information we have, I think that's. I'm
Reasonable.
comfortable with that from a staff perspective.
Okay.
Maybe I'm just gonna get them for, research on it.
Trail maintenance, I agree, get rid of smoker, get rid of mud pond, not that they're not important, but people aren't knocking down our door saying.
Right,
These are a problem, I literally hear like at least once or twice a week, somebody goes, oh, you guys are in charge of the trails, right? What's going on with, I can't use Allen Brook, my kid can't walk to school, like, it's just constant.
yeah, it is constant.
And if people are continuing to use it in an unsafe state, no matter how many signs you put up or boards you put, like, I
Sure.
see people crossing out all the time.
yeah, absolutely.
I'm like,
Of course, kids are
Don't do
gonna do
that.
that. Yeah,
Why did we put mud
With the
pond
dogs.
yeah,
in,
oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a little crazy.
why did we put mud pond in a year ago? It looks like a pretty expensive project. Is that just because it's a lot of?
At the
punishment
last
and
round,
roadblocks?
there was a lot of money still available, and so it was reasonable to ask for something that was. Yeah, $300,000-400,000, but this round, I think. If you ask me, you can have, if they said you can have mud pond or you can have Allen Brook, which I don't think they would ever say. Ever
Right.
pick more than one project,
Yeah,
they'd be like, it would be Allen Brook all the way for me.
Yeah, so do you have enough to like know how to write that? Just ask for the Allen Brook.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think what's most interesting, I'd like some clarity on is, you know, how comfortable this committee is with proceeding the way that we've kind of planned it, which is making the repair with the bridge as is, or if you're more leaning towards exploring
What's the
other
cost?
options.
Yeah.
Around $55,000 is the high
That's
fall
high.
estimate.
That's-
Of trying to have enough money to do, you know, considering
Unknowns.
unknowns, yes.
It's a lot of money to invest in slang if we're thinking about completely replacing the location and stuff.
not really.
I mean, on the scale of the ARPA fund, it's
Yeah.
not, but.
If
Yeah.
only we had the trail counter data now.
Right, yeah, that's a good point.
I'm pretty sure that trail would like be a
Off
deep
the
red,
charts.
like off the charts, heavily used. All season, all year long. I mean, my personal opinion is, yeah, 50,000 is. 50,000 is adequate to get that back and built. I mean, these are ARPA funds, it's not a bonded question, it's not.
I agree, it should be done, because if we're gonna do an engineering study, it's gonna be years before
Right,
we come up with something and then
Yeah,
we won't have
that's
money
true.
for it.
That's true,
Yeah.
yeah,
I agree.
yeah.
So maybe it needs to be broken down into 2 bullet points. One is the immediate fix, which we already have engineering for. We think needs to move forward with ARPA funding and then engineering and design consultation to figure out.
More resilient.
A long-term solution, because we
Yep.
think it'll eventually wash out again based on
Yeah.
trends.
I mean, do the builders have an engineer to do that, the people fixing the bridge? Can they say, okay, we'll fix this, but it's gonna get washed out again, like, do they have the expertise for that?
So the design firm, Engineering Ventures, I think we could ask them about doing some sort of analysis of the surrounding area. If we're already asking them to design the repairs or update the design, really,
They're gonna come visit
You know,
the site.
they're gonna come visit the
Yeah.
site. I think that that's a good bang for your buck.
Yeah,
Long-term solution question about flood resilience.
Mhm.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
So then the recommendation is that. From what I'm hearing is that. The two trails we identified last year are removed. And there's. Two recommendations to proceed with the temporary, well, we're calling it temporary, but it should be a sort of. Engineered as a permanent fix, but we know the problem is gonna continue. And so for that reason, we're making a second recommendation to do a resiliency study for a. Better, more permanent structure and location. Or to evaluate a permanent structure or. Flood resilient.
Right.
Design.
mhm,
The design work for the repair was around $14,000. I don't know if anyone has any experience with that, assessment for the. For the area might be, maybe just scoping location and then what
Yeah.
that location would need.
I feel
Not
like-
actually designing
Right,
it, but
right, yeah,
doing an assessment and then figuring out, based on that assessment, what that would look like. Is that an additional $5,000, $10,000? I'm not sure, thinking out loud a little bit here, I'm not sure that this committee needs to put a dollar amount of request for that. But. You could have as part of this ask that, hey, this is a priority, there also needs to be long-term plan. And I
mhm.
think that that's clear from you all.
I would think the design firm, if they're gonna fix this and know the problem that we've had, are gonna do something. I mean, it looked. Like what they came up with is a pretty good fix, right? Cause they're thinking about withstanding floods, aren't they? I mean, they mustn't,
And I think we were last time too, and I really think it was like 3 years ago.
yeah,
Yeah, it's gotten worse. I think people's whole perception is it's gotten worse over the last couple of years. So we probably weren't thinking at the level we are now, I'm guessing.
Well, these big rain events, they're
Yeah, 2
undermining.
years in a row that they were
Yeah.
100-year storms.
Right,
worldwide,
The problem
Yeah.
here too is that the channel was diverted.
right.
And so it's undermined a certain spot, and that's what we're looking to repair.
Mhm.
If there was another change, the beavers leave. That area will continue to change, basically.
Mhm.
It's an active, very.
Same thing the entire state's figuring out about waterways.
right.
So that they don't stay where they are.
Has there been discussion of putting in more robust base for the bridge, bringing in massive rocks to stabilize the shoreline? I mean,
Bank armoring is part of this project, and I think that includes rocks and fill. There's a threshold with the state permits, and I think they were trying to stay under
yeah,
Mm,
for the,
they're gonna be. That's
The
the
amount
amount
of
of
fill.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
there hasn't been a conversation, to answer your question, but beyond Matt and I talking about what makes sense of a larger scale project there, a bridge that you described.
I mean, I think that would be that's the alternative, right?
are we saying we're not gonna ask for funds for that larger scale? Fix, because I feel like that is the thing that's cost prohibitive, I mean, making a
Yeah.
$50,000, $55,000
Yeah, ARPA
repair.
funding may be the only way to get.
Right.
It might be the only way we can afford that, so I think we should be asking for the whole thing, it should be two parts.
two parts.
$55,000 to get the current structure operational
Mhm.
with some resiliency measures. And then a second item that we don't have a number, because we don't have this engineering, but we know it's gonna be expensive to do a fix.
Could be up to $500,000.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be a shared thing, maybe even with trying to get state funds and federal fund. I don't know how that all works.
Yeah, I think if the number's smaller, it's more likely to get accepted, but if it's and we could share additional costs at that point. It could be a bonded item for the remaining cost, the way that, like, the parking lot, right, we got grant funds, so then they were able to reduce the bond size and say, well, the parking lot.
Yeah.
700,000, but only asking for 400,000 from the town. I think we should be thinking that way, that like, pick a number that we think the select board can actually commit to, and then if it's
Right.
above that, we just gotta.
So that would be a third
Mhm.
item underneath the study.
Trail counters, quick repair, and
Long-term
then
solution.
long-term solution for the crossing.
Well, that's four, trail counters, quick repair. Engineering study, the long-term solution, and then funding the long-term. The actual construction of,
I'm thinking of just putting one number in. Total
For
that
this-
says,
for this study.
$200,000 to cover a quick repair, study of new site and funds to help fund the new solution, and if it goes beyond that, then the additional costs will have to be funded through other measures. That's what I think, is like, do like 200,000.
yeah,
I think if we get too granular, then they're gonna like not know what to do with the ask. I think just saying we need this much money, and these are the things that we will do with that money. We will repair the existing structure, we will get a design study to figure out a long-term solution, and then we will use the remaining money to help implement the long-term solution.
is that useful, Andrew?
It is useful, I think it's a decision,
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think, they know the importance of repairing the Allen Brook
I agree.
Bridge.
You don't have to
So,
prove that.
Yeah,
yeah,
I think people will,
Yeah, that's good.
if they know it's on that it's gonna be discussed, it's like where people will show up to and ask for it.
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I think 200,000 is a little low to do both the temporary and or the quick fix and the study and the permanent rebuilding. I think that's multi-years.
Not sure we should ask for the final piece.
yeah, the rebuilding,
'Cause
that's,
we don't know what it's gonna be. I mean, I think. The, initial fix and engine, tell us what we can do to make this resilient. Basically, and where.
So $100,000 initial fix.
Yeah,
and
but what if
55?
they're like, the thing that you need to do is completely move it to a different part of the river. And like start from scratch and then like make it actually be a bike path that connects like what if it's like a.
Well, it could be the solution. I mean,
Yeah.
I just looked over. I know Laura was perhaps looking too, but there's not much. High banked topography differences within a
right,
half a mile each way of the current
that's the
bridge.
bottom of.
Yeah, it's
Vermont.
like a floodplain.
This is my stress, is like, oh my gosh, we're gonna pour this money into this thing that like, yes, lots of people are using it, but like. If it's not long for this world,
Well, we'll know it after that. though.
Yeah, but
In
will it
theory,
be
We'll have
long
a
for
short-term fix and we'll know. The solution might not be putting it here.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Why should we, I think we need to know that, that's an
Yeah.
important piece.
And I don't think we should call it a quick fix, we're actually trying to fix it,
Yeah,
and we're putting boulders and filling.
Yeah.
This isn't a quick fix, we're fixing it,
yeah,
Fix the current structure.
But
I
we
agree.
still know it, it needs to be more resilient, so we need
How much
to.
money is that for the current fix plus exploration of long-term resilience?
I don't know how you, did you say 50-something thousand was, I mean, do we have any idea of how much the so-called quick fix might?
It's around 35,000 for the labor and materials for the repair,
Yeah,
and it's around 15 for the.
so we got that number, I guess the number we don't have is what it'll cost to have. an
I think we need
engineering study.
two under this item. I think we need the first item to be, yes. Do the fix. Do it the way the engineering study recommended it. And then second. Study a long-term solution so that when this fix is damaged again, we have a plan in place for a better location and a reasonable estimate of the engineering behind it. I agree, there's not much there, but there is something there. I mean, it could be on just like 100 feet down the ball from the path from the ball field.
Yeah.
And that might be a better spot
And and if you use a different technique.
and a
to
different,
Span it,
exactly.
then that may be missed.
I'm actually wondering
I
if,
guess I agree. I don't know how you estimate the engineering piece.
Well,
of
we
that.
know that the design for this one was $15,000.
No, starting with an existing structure to fix.
Yeah, my guess it's gonna be, I'd put in 50,000,
Okay,
because this is a much bigger thing.
that would make it 110, 105, 110
Yeah,
total. Would you be comfortable?
Someone's gonna be like, get rid of the beavers.
yeah, but that,
I
That's not-
think
that's not
people
the-
love the
yeah.
beaver stuff.
I'm not sure that solves it though, because.
No, it doesn't,
Otherwise,
I'm
Yeah.
just
Still gonna get the
predicting
same
public
volume of
response.
water
Yeah,
missing
yeah,
through there.
You have already got.
It may be
Yeah.
less, okay, I think that makes sense to me. I'd put in 50,000.
110,000.
yeah, I think that makes
But
sense.
not in two parts, just one number.
Wait,
Yeah.
Well,
wait,
three parts.
110, and then the explanation of what the 110 goes to is 55,000
got it.
for the recommended fix. And the remainder for the study of looking
Yeah.
after crossing Allen Brook.
I mean, this is a management decision that I don't know that we need to get into. If I were putting a budget forward to the select board. I would probably try to itemize it personally, because then you can defend them individually. And I would hate to see that budget get like one target becomes one thing for cutting. I would like to put two things down. Personally, and actually three, because then you've got the trail counters.
Yeah, I think three separate numbers would
Yeah.
go, what do we say, 10,000 or 15 for the trails?
Yeah.
And you go 50 roughly for the immediate
55.
fix, 55, and then another 50 for determining a long-term plan for how to, avoid upcoming flooding
Mhm.
events.
Yes.
And the damage.
That's how I would do it, but ultimately, I think we're all in
I
agreement on
agree
what the
with you.
priorities
I'm
are.
okay with that.
I'm okay with
for
that
it
too.
That's three.
That's great. I haven't heard back from Engineering Ventures for the record yet. I reached out earlier this week. I can also ask them probably
If
today,
you can get better numbers.
if we can get a better idea of
Yeah.
what that may cost.
Okay.
The study.
Yeah, that might cost money to actually do that, and so we can continue that discussion, but I think your reasoning here makes sense to me, and I will reflect that in the memo.
Good.
Great. If you want to shoot that by me before it actually goes in, because I know our time is
Yeah.
short, feel
Yeah.
free. Okay.
Good job, Alex.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It was a tough decision.
Mhm.
All of it's important.
all of it's important. And it's free money.
I'm stressed out that there are children on the boardwalk.
Yeah,
like the
that's
way
what-
it is currently.
Yeah, every time I see somebody.
Oh, so
crossing, I'm like,
people
that
cross
needs
it
to be
now?
fixed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
It's pretty precarious too.
yeah,
yeah.
middle school kids going back and forth every day over the,
I'm sure their parents are like, walk around.
oh, no.
Oh,
I
I'm sure they have no idea.
I see a lot of the parents doing it.
Really?
Crossing the broken bridge, yeah,
Oh, really?
all the time.
With with
Yeah,
dogs.
I see people, yeah,
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
all the time.
that's amazing, because there's a lot of stuff
It's
that
like
they have to get
clearly
through.
dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah, with their dogs.
All right, good discussion, thank you. I see that we have Tim and Lauren.
Morning.
Morning, Tim. Morning, Lauren.
I mean, I don't mind.
Tim is
Was that
outside.
you guys are talking about the Allen Brook Bridge off the back of the sports fields there?
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Did that get ruined more through this summer and December then?
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's sagging more now, Tim. Tim did the
Yeah.
repairs when it first,
Oh,
Thank
or
you.
Winooski Valley Park District.
But
You're
did anything did like Timber and Stone ever come in after that and do any work after we did our temporary repair there?
No,
No. Okay. I haven't seen what the situation is out there now, but I was sort of just reading through your guys' bullet points on the different ARPA funds there, but yeah, it's interesting. I guess, that I never see when that water is flowing, at its max capacity there. But yeah, I don't know if having a wider span in that middle area that got washed out, and I don't know if it had the helical anchors in everywhere, or if some of the areas weren't the helical piers, so they washed out easier.
Well, that's what we're just recommending, that we study is a more permanent solution to
Yeah,
have that be a better consistent trail crossing.
It's not at all a commentary on your work and
No.
completely a commentary on the changing landscape.
Mhm.
and
For sure,
what
yeah,
we
yeah,
have-
no, we knew that we were trying to just get it a little sturdier when we were out there, because we didn't have the ability to do the helicline.
There's people still using it, Tim, and your work's probably why nobody's fallen into the brook.
So let's get our update on Jacob Krantz.
Yeah, so I don't know, Andrew, myself and Nick were talking earlier this week a little bit. You know, I think things are still hinging on lawyer talk. But you know, we were throwing around a few ideas for possible days to have a walk out there, try to get you know, some public interaction going on over the fall here. I know Andrew, and we were looking at a couple dates in October, possibly for possibly meeting the Conservation Commission out there, if anybody wanted to take a walk over the property. You know, it looks like your schedule is relatively packed in some of your meetings there, but I don't know, I think Andrew thought we might be able to meet out there one of the upcoming October dates, possibly.
Would this be
So
not open to the public?
no, it would, so let's, yeah.
Any of our meetings are open to the public.
Well, I just mean like, it would be actively inviting the public, like doing outreach to say, hey, there's gonna be a
Right,
walk.
An outreach event
Yes,
that we advertise.
so I discussed with Tim and Nick, and we sort of had the question of, oh, well, first of all, just getting a date on the calendar to sort of get some momentum going and try to get the public outreach started in the fall. And so as we're hearing more from the lawyers and starting local permits, there is this public outreach that is kind of, it's begun already. So there's a question of, do we want to do one, maybe two walks? And I think from my perspective, if you all were at one of those walks or at the walk, I think that would be really great to tell the public, hey, come meet Winooski Valley Park District and the Conservation Commission to walk the trail. And we discussed doing some invasive treatment too. That was sort of a question, and Tim had mentioned he might go out there to see, you know, what is actually can be done out there, and also maybe check what the blowdown situation is over there, because we haven't been out.
Mhm.
So this question of, do we want to do a walk? And it sounds like people are supportive of that. Do you want to do one? Try to do two? And what I was thinking, and also based on Tim's availability, Wednesdays do work pretty well, and obviously we meet on Wednesdays. We have the October 16th meeting is planned. I was interested in giving you the option to maybe not meet in the morning and then do a walk in the afternoon. We could discuss doing a walk in the morning. I think that, you know, depending on when we do it during the day, we're gonna get different people.
Yes.
And so there's the question of your availability, what you think the time is that would be best. For reference, in the past, you did a walk out there and it was at 5:30 PM. And you only did one.
In October, it's gonna be
It's gonna be
getting
dark.
dark,
Getting dark, yes.
but like 4:30 to 5:30 can work.
And so, right, so would you be interested in, you know, shifting a meeting? And maybe October 16th, instead you do an afternoon walk and invite the public? Or we could shoot for one of the off meeting weeks, either the 9th or the 23rd. And do a walk, and you know, I think. The big motivation, if we were going to do two walks, would be that you could do them at different times, so you could
Mhm.
have more people there. That said, that doubles the scheduling, and you know, we wouldn't be expected to be at both of them, but if we could get participation from this commission at a walk, I think that's great.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I think morning, it's wetter, but it's a beautiful time to be out there too. I mean, so we could do our normal 7 a.m. time, although it's,
School families are gonna be basically out though, cause.
well,
they're getting to school and getting to work, so.
I guess here's what I'm kind of thinking is that, do we as a commission need to walk it and talk about what's needed? And then make recommendations for like what actual public outreach should look like? Or do we want to go straight into the like, let's start inviting people out there and figuring out as we walk with them? That's what I'm trying to think through and would invite feedback on. So the question I guess I have is, do we want to be out there first and foremost to amongst ourselves, or do we want to immediately go into the public outreach?
I'm ready for public outreach personally, I don't know where people are, but I've been there, I was on the walk, whatever, year and a half ago, so I'm pretty familiar with it.
I guess
You weren't there at that time, so.
I was there last fall in the morning with Tim and
So you've seen it
Simon.
once.
I've seen it once, but I guess my question too is I don't know what kind of condition it's in either. And that if you invite public outreach and then there's a bunch of blowdowns and you don't know how, I don't know. Tim, have you been out there?
I have not too recently, but I think Andrew and I were discussing, he wanted to sort of lay eyes on the property maybe before the walk. So I guess depending on when we schedule this, we were thinking we might get out there on our own beforehand, before the bigger group possibly. So I don't know, I think we'd probably be ready for public outreach unless we go out there and we're like, whoa, we got a lot of cleanup to do out here or something like that.
And you asked about availability and I don't know if other people have their calendars in front of them, but I teach on Wednesday afternoons. I could like zip over after that, the morning of the 9th, like the Wednesday before, I do currently have open and could hold it. Lest it gets scheduled.
What time did you get over after work on Wednesdays?
I mean, I could be there by 4:30. I could also like make them come.
My vote would be 4:30 on Wednesday the 9th.
On
So
the
that we
9th.
don't miss a meeting the following, because I feel like we have. Pretty decent backlog of things we're trying to get through. Just my sense, David, you have a better sense of the agenda situation, but the thought of missing a meeting to me is a little stressful.
I'm free at 4:30 on the 9th.
I feel like we have a lot. I think
You'd rather do it during our.
I would rather we actually have this at be
Our meeting.
our meeting to talk about what's needed at the property so that we're maybe that's not necessary, but I just feel like it's not real until we see it in person and sort of have the park district actually tell us what's happening.
If that's
in
the
person.
case, then I think we should, like, what's the latest we could? Cause we have we've punted a bunch of things off, like, we have a lot of,
We have to deal with ERF.
yeah, we have to deal with
Yeah.
ERF, like.
That's the main thing for
Reed's
me.
head is gonna explode.
ERF is a goal of the October 2nd meeting.
Yeah,
We also have a conversation that meeting about a Glazer HDA. We could punt town plan that meeting.
yeah, I think the town plan.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm relatively flexible, but morning time, 8 o'clock might be about the earliest I could make it out there after doing some school drop-offs and
Sure,
Yeah.
things.
yeah.
At least in Williston.
Well, yeah, I mean, afternoon meetings are, we could do a 4:30, 4:30 on an October afternoon is probably gonna be a pretty nice day.
I'm
Not
just thinking
as
that
bad.
would enable some families,
Mhm.
like people could bring their kids who live in that area. To it, because they should be home from school if they don't have like after school activities. It's not everybody, but at least it gives a chance. I just feel like the morning, you're only gonna get basically retired people.
Of course.
which I think they
Yeah.
generally will be able to come in the afternoon too.
Yeah, 4:30 is a good time. I'm free on all Wednesday afternoons.
We have guaranteed attendance from Kim's class.
I won't really do that, then you'll just have like 60 students who are like, I think I can just like Zoom.
Okay, and Gary, you're out in October, so that's why Gary's quiet, so.
But I could go to more than one walk too.
Where would we advertise? How would we do this outreach?
Probably the standard front porch forum. Town website, we could see if we could get something on the main page. When you first open up the town website. We could also let the observer know and try to get something.
We're talking about
It's a
the
good way
night,
to reach people.
I'm just gonna hold it.
I think the observer is. Through town plan and everything, that was probably the most effective way
Mhm.
to catch
Yeah.
people. We could also do flyers. Post them up around town.
And what is the value, just so we're all clear, what is the value of having the public here? Are we asking them questions? We're just trying to show them around? Are we gonna walk the trail, what's identified on the trail map as the Jacob Loop? What are we gonna actually, what's the agenda for that?
I think it's largely to, make it familiar that, hey, this is gaining traction again. You expect to see permits. If you live nearby, you'll probably be getting an abutters notice
Mhm.
soon. This is the plan, and let's go walk and see what,
Avoiding surprises.
right. It's sort of the education approach, and we've been talking about that with some of the things going on at Catamount as well. This is the plan.
Right. We're not necessarily making decisions based off this. This is my like overarching recommendation that we're just like really clear about when we're taking input for decision making and when we're just.
Introducing and
Right,
educating.
yeah, so that people don't feel like, oh, I gave my input and it wasn't incorporated.
Um,
So introduction to Jacob Krantz, walk the Jacob Loop,
Mhm.
yeah.
Tim, any other thoughts on that?
No, I think that'll be, I don't know, a good walk to go out and look at nature and see what's around on the property a little bit and just sort of, get people aware that, that's moving along. So that way when hopefully transfers and things like that happen, it's not a big surprise to everybody. Just to get everybody on board.
Mhm.
4:30. Wednesday is early release day,
Oh, right.
Mhm.
so, we could do earlier. It does mean that you're not gonna get many, but if you're doing 4:30, people aren't gonna take off work to get there anyways, so you're talking about people who are free in the afternoon. Or us. I would be in favor of like a 3:30 start or 3 o'clock start. I think that if you're actually gonna do a loop of the Jacob Trail or whatever we call it, you're gonna need more than an hour. It's because it's a long walk in, especially with a group.
How much time were you thinking, Tim, to lead a group?
Yeah.
around?
Good question.
I don't know if an hour and a half would be good. Maybe once Andrew and I get out there, we could scope it out and sort of do an out and back and see how long we should plan on.
Planned for 2 hours the last time. It was 5:30 to 7:30 earlier in the season. I just checked and sunset is around 6:40 that night, so.
So 6:30 is pretty dark if sunsets at 6:40, so.
I know I would have trouble earlier than 4, but that doesn't mean other people wouldn't. I was thinking, probably do 4 to 5:30, but
You could also probably show up and catch up, because it's
Yeah.
pretty straightforward, just.
yeah. I'm not worried about me. I'm just trying to think about other people who with work schedules.
Sure.
Right, the family, his kids go to part 2 on the early release day. 'Cause they-
Yeah.
Well, okay, so a start time somewhere between 3:30 and 4:30.
The other topic that we discussed, a little bit more in depth in our meeting, was the naming conversation, and,
Yeah.
Tim, you had found an article about, using, I'm not sure if it was Abenaki names specifically, but navigating that and some challenges that, another place in Vermont, I think, had faced with that. Do you want to just tell the committee a bit about it?
It was just like a VPR article from a couple years ago, but it was more sort of talking about, I guess a state park that, might be called like Beaver Pond, in its Abenaki name, but it, I don't know, various other Abenaki groups were, I guess it wasn't a very significant area. So they were sort of being like, we would have just called this Beaver Pond or Bend in the River. And, so it doesn't really have an actual, Abenaki name to it just because of it's not a, a big significant feature, I guess, compared to like a Mount Mansfield or Lake Champlain or various things that were, I guess, more significant in, describing the landscape at that point in time. It was just an interesting sort of viewpoint. And, it also went into, approaching it's, I guess, like the Vermont Council for Native American Affairs and, for almost like approval or input on that as well, which would be, I guess something that we would have to be thinking about as well. So we weren't sort of just winging it. But yeah, I could share that article with Andrew, and he could share it with everybody if people wanted to sort of see it. And but yeah, it was just sort of an interesting thing about yes, if it, I don't know, it's not the most significant landscape, so I don't know if it's, worthy of, us putting a name on it like that or not. So that was just one viewpoint, I guess.
And so a question that we had is do we explore that a little bit and put out some feelers now to ask some of the resources that might help naming it an Abenaki name, ask them right now if that's something that's, of interest, given where the land is. And, it seems like there isn't a clear significance to the land, to the Abenaki tribe. There also isn't really a clear, defining feature besides the Winooski River being right there. And so, we were looking for some direction. It was, actually Nick's idea to just ask this committee, is that something that we should explore now? To see if there's interest in that. And then from there, you could kind of make the decision about, do you proceed down that path, or do you choose a different path for naming?
Yeah, it sounds like a great suggestion.
Okay.
Personally, to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind calling it Bend in the River either, because I'm sure
Yeah.
there's at least to us, a unique name that the Abenaki would use to
Describe it.
describe that. And therefore, we're at least bringing people who remember, who used this land in the past and what the history of it is, get people at least thinking about it.
I think it would be good for us to all look at resources, so maybe the article that you shared, you could send to Andrew, and Andrew, you could send out to everyone, but I'll also just say that if folks are not aware of this, there's like a huge controversy
Organized
happening.
tribes.
Right, and so like, if you even just Google, Grable Estate recognized and send everybody the link to that, I think we should all think really carefully about who we consult with
Mhm.
Yeah, that's
amidst this,
good.
and I'll just note that like, because this is like, I can just recuse myself from this whole thing if it comes down to it, but one of my ongoing research partners is Penobscot Nation, and they're part of Odanak, and they have told me in no uncertain terms, you do not work with the Vermont tribes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, got it. So that's my
Yeah.
reality.
Yeah, we don't wanna screw it up, basically.
Yeah, we don't
I
want to
think
screw
we
it.
should
Yeah.
just think real carefully.
Yeah.
So let's start with the article.
Yeah, and like
Okay.
Google, send out if you haven't listened to Brave Estate
I've heard
Recognized,
about that.
it's a pot you could like garden and have in your garden. It's a good
Great.
overview.
So I think this will be an ongoing conversation then for our, our upcoming. Kind of. Every meeting, we're gonna be talking to the park district, so
Mhm.
yeah, we'll share those information, that information. Tim, if you can send me that article out, I'll send it out. And great,
And when you send out those emails, we cannot respond, right? To all, no reply all, we can only respond to you. Just as a,
I think if we're
you guys can
having,
talk about that if you have reflections or you wanna share with the group, mostly it's just RSVPs, I say don't reply all because.
but at what point does it become like open, when
Can't
is open
discuss.
meeting?
Oh,
law?
right.
right,
Yeah.
that's what I'm getting at.
You
Yeah.
can't discuss issues, you
Yeah.
can share
Good point.
resources for the group to review. But
Right,
you can't say, I think this, or
Mhm.
at that point, I think our emails have to be public record.
just to be safe in the past on all the boards I've been part of, we just said you don't reply all.
Yeah,
You
so-
can send it to the
Mhm.
chair, like what I do is I send it to David and Kim and
Right,
Andrew, and that way it's not a quorum. But everybody who's in decision making about agendas and stuff knows what's going on.
if you wanna send thoughts, I can. Put those together and then we can review at our next meeting, and discuss any of those.
Okay, so let's start with the links for now, and reply to you is optional, and if it is, and but know that if you do reply to Andrew, that might be then part of the record of the meeting. And
Yes.
everyone clear on that?
Yes,
Okay, great. So we're gonna hold the 9th.
Mhm.
Is that what we're holding? Okay. And we'll just hold that, maybe a start time of any time between 3:30 and 4:30, but sunsets at 6:30.
It's 40, yeah.
yeah, it'll be contingent on Tim and I going out, and if it's a really long walk. Maybe we'll go earlier, I think. If not, basically, I think we should start getting that outreach out sooner rather than later, get flyers up. And so, yeah, just expect to see that and I'll be sharing that with you.
Okay.
Yeah, Andrew, maybe maybe we'll try to do something like early next week just to get moving. Got a bridge I gotta fix over the next couple days here, or else I'd try to run out there.
We know the feeling.
That sounds good. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. Okay, we are at time, but are there any other business to attend to?
Yes, the use of public lands agreement is something that we do every year with VAST. In the past, you've been asked to comment on any anything related to the agreement, related to VAST trail use. They do some maintenance this time of year. And in the past, we've updated this agreement to include insurance for the town. It's also been included or just updated to specify Mud Pond Country Park versus recreation or I'm blanking. The distinction between the two mud ponds,
Conservation area versus.
conservation area, country park, thank you. Those are the only changes that have been made since like 2015. And so if anyone has any comments, I know we have 2 minutes. In the past, I don't think there have been, but
Do our, would our trail counters work on Bass Trail usage?
The ones that brand, that Beth sent, yeah. They're, it's like, yes. Depending on what we got, yes.
The trails never opened last year, so.
I will say that I proposed a project that I won't hear back on for a while about the impact of climate change on winter recreation in the northern forest and the upper Midwest. And I reached out to VAST to see if they wanted to be partners on the project, and they essentially said, like, we don't really need another study, we know what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're not riding our sleds
Like,
anymore.
I will focus on Nordic skiing. then.
Yeah.
I apologize, I've got a hard stop out to run, but I am in support of continuing the agreement with us,
Yeah.
whatever you all decide.
Yep,
So I think the long and short is like, yeah, we totally could
Thank you.
put trail campers out there when, if and when we get them, and also I think like they know what's going on.
Mhm.
Like they can just probably tell us.
Yeah, and they're good stewards of the land too. They
Yeah.
get right in there and cut trees away from the town trails.
Yeah.
There's a 1-year agreement.
Thinking about extending it to 2, just given the fact that.
So you can do that? I thought the
Back.
whole VAS system was based on year-to-year permissions.
I
But maybe-
haven't explored it
Yeah.
in depth. Eric said he'd be interested in exploring that.
I think one thing that I'll emphasize again, and it's in here, kind of buried, is the maintenance time. It says in there that it either has to be dry or frozen,
Mhm.
and that they have to repair whatever they do at the time of maintenance.
Mhm.
So I don't know if there's any way to emphasize that in a little note, because I think that's in there because years ago they just rutted the hell out of it when they went in during super muddy time and didn't fix it.
I will say, I think that is, I know that is very clear.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I'm working with Pat, I've been talking with Pat Bull.
Pat's been doing that forever. Yeah.
And that's very clear, is that it's when it's dry, when it's frozen is when to be out there with a 4-wheeler.
Yeah.
Basically.
Great.
So.
okay.
I'm happy
Any,
with that.
yeah, any other comments?
Looks good.
Then I think we are, no other business, Andrew?
I guess I'll just mention, we are over time. There was conversation at Catamount last week about some trail easements that they are looking to secure.
Right.
To provide access to the trails long term, basically existing trail connections that cross private land.
This is Jim's driveway
That's one
business.
of them.
That's one of them. There's another small one that's further down, the road and. Kim had actually brought up the idea of possibly using ERF funds to secure any. There.
We do it on other, like, we do it for trails in other parts of town, and so I wasn't sure whose purview.
Right, it's currently there's, the landowners there have actually offered the easement. And the family center has asked, because the town would own it, the family center can't really, as I understand it, that the town cover the costs for the legal costs and the assessment of the property, which is a pretty small.
Yeah, it makes
Fee,
sense
but-
to me.
Yeah, we can discuss further, but just wanted to put that on your
Yeah,
radar.
I've been seeing some of the maps, that they're releasing.
Yeah.
Not a lot of changes, but I guess it's just these easements then, I guess, right?
And I think it's like changing slip. Like
Oh,
things that are on really
Yeah.
steep slope, closing
Yeah.
them.
Mhm.
yeah.
So I guess I'll see you guys in November.